Hi there, my name's Jake and I look after the King's College Medicine and Dentistry lecture series. As part of the 2023 programme, I'm going to record a series of conversations with Year 1 to final year medical and dental students. Because I know that a really important part of making a strong application to medical and dental school is for you guys to develop an understanding of what it's like to actually study at medical and dental school. And one of the best ways to do that is to hear from those on the course. And so today I'm joined by Alavi, who is a 1A student on the extended medical degree programme at King's. And we talk about his current experience as a medical student so far, how he's got involved in lots of sports clubs and societies. So if you want to find out more about the extracurricular opportunities at King's, this is a really great conversation for you to learn more about those activities you can get involved in addition to academic study. We also talk about the application process and the different programs Alavi was interested in and applied to and got involved in throughout Year 12. And then we talk about some final top tips that Alavi would share with his Year 12 self if he has the knowledge now and he was able to share that with himself, say if he was in Year 12 and applying now. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Please leave a comment or get back to me via email in the email listed below, outreachformedicine.ac.uk, if you found this interesting, and if you have any suggestions for other stuff you'd like me to cover and to ask our students. So I hope you enjoy. Hi everyone. So this afternoon I'm welcoming Alavi. So Alavi, could you tell me a bit more about what you're doing right now, your subject area and what year you're currently in?
Hi guys, my name is Alavi and I'm a first year EMDP student and I'm from East London.
Great. And what sixth form did you go to, Alavi?
I went to the NCS, so the Newham Collegiate Sixth Form.
Great. So that's quite a big one actually, isn't it? It's one of the much larger sixth form colleges in the area.
Yeah, it had the 300 people in the cohort. It's quite
Wow.
famous.
Yeah,
Well,
I know it's quite popular. We have quite a few students applying for our programs. So, Alavi, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. And you're the first person who I'm interviewing as part of the sort of 2023 lecture series sort of conversations, which I'm calling it that. I'm branding it as that. I might change that based on student feedback. So thanks so much for being my guinea pig in a manner of words. I appreciate that. So just to get us started, so you're in 1A now, which is the first year of the EMDP. So for those people tuning in who don't know what that is, so the EMDP is the King's Extended Medical Degree Program, which is separated into 2 years. So instead of the first year just taking 1 year, it's essentially split over 2 years. So you have 1A and 1B. And so Alavi, you're in 1A, so you've just started. So like right now, sort of what does your sort of day-to-day experience look like on that course, given that we're, sort of towards the end of your first term now?
um, my day begins in the morning, so I wake up, I get dressed, and about from 9 to 12 o'clock, I start making my way to university. I take the Jubilee line from Canary Wharf and I get to London Bridge, which takes me to Guy's campus at King's College, where all the medicine lectures and classes are based at. I go in like between this time period because the schedule it's a bit flexible. Sometimes lectures start at 8 a.m., other times they start at 12 or even in the afternoon.
Mm.
And I don't have to come in every day. I come in when I have lectures and classes. Um, After I attend my classes and lectures, I have lunch in the area. I could go to Guy's Bar, which is a King's food outlet, or I could go to the food stores at Borough Market. And after lunch, I hang out with my friends, which I've met through societies at King's College. And towards the end of the day, I tend to do sports. So I go to King's College gym, which I find to be quite cheap, membership wise, or I go to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu or boxing, which is offered by King's College and its societies. And then at the end of the day, I cycle back home using the Santander bikes, which I think makes commute more accessible and cheaper, in my opinion. And then when I get home, I try to revise the content I've learned during the day and get a head start on tomorrow.
Great. Okay, that's quite interesting actually, because I'm a commuter as well. The fact that you sort of travel in using the tube in the morning and then cycle back, which I think is a great idea. And I'm really going to avoid the temptation to go on a tangent now to talk about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I'm a big fan of, and we'll leave that for after our talk now. Um, in terms of those societies and sports clubs you've joined, sort of beyond BJJ and boxing, what else have you got involved in?
I'm mainly involved in the Islamic Society at my university. It's quite a big society, like it has hundreds of members, and it has quite a big range of sub projects within the society itself. It has like academics. It helps me with how to study and whatnot. It provides resources. Um, it provides mentorship, like to pair me up with a buddy, like from older years, and they act as a mentor to guide me through the years and how I should deal with situation at, during my time at university. And other projects they have, it's called ARC, Acts of Random Kindness. So
Mm.
it's like a charity project, and we help out in a soup kitchen during the week, like on a Friday afternoon. And I find it a great way to spend my time at university.
And for both of those societies, how did you discover them? Did you kind of look like before you joined King's? Was it something you discovered during Freshers' Fair? Did you kind of have an idea that you might join, say, the Islamic Society beforehand? Yeah, I'm curious like, how you went about discovering those two.
Um, so all the societies I mentioned up to now were like sub-projects under the Islamic Society.
Oh, cool.
Uh, the other society could have been Bengali Society to connect with people from the same ethnicity as me. I found out about them through, let's say, the Freshers' Fair when I started out university. Like there were stores with all the societies available. I got to meet them and ask questions about the societies and what activities are involved. So, and the website, when you're applying to King's College, there's going to be a list of all the societies available. So you can get a head start and look into like what you would be interested in joining once you get into King's College.
Yeah, there's so much. I remember when I started uni as well, like you've got over hundreds of different things you can get involved in. And actually, it's more of a, if you had all the time in the world, you'd probably try like half of them maybe. But that's brilliant as well, like how you describe, the opportunity to, get a mentor, get support through that, and meet like-minded others as well. I think that's really powerful, isn't it?
That note, when I went to the Freshers' Fair, I was collecting leaflets about every society that I was interested in. And at the end of the day, I had a bag full of leaflets. And I had to dedicate my time to sort through the leaflets and find out which ones I can actually like go to and spend my time, like commit my time towards. I had to sort through and filter out each single one. It was quite hard because I had so many that I was interested in. And it just
No.
goes to show how the societies can cater towards everyone's interests. Like you're bound to
Yeah.
find something that relates to you.
And with the sports, you mentioned so the boxing, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, are they like new like interests you've taken on, or had you practiced those beforehand?
They're new interests because I haven't practiced them before. And I just went through this list of sports that I would want to be involved in. And I found them to be the most viable in my situation, like evaluating the cost, the time, and how useful I'd find the sport. So that's how
No.
I filtered through the selection.
Yeah, yeah, because there's just so many, and I think for people that kind of like niche sports as well, there's so many available there. So, like rowing or like lacrosse or say football as well, and rugby, all those sports. But your martial arts, you can literally do anything, right? So taekwondo, BJJ, boxing, MMA, and there's this whole plethora of things, which is brilliant. But thinking about your sort of university experience so far, then, and what we've talked about with the societies and also studying, what do you feel is the biggest difference between that experience and say your final year of sixth form? How, I mean, in terms of routine or yeah, how has that been different for you?
The big difference between life at sixth form and university, in my opinion, would be the independence. Like academics wise, no teachers will chase you up on your work most of the time. So it's up to you if you want to be on top of the work and the lectures, and you can easily fall behind if you misuse that like newfound independence. Um, Other than that, another difference could be like the diversity. When you start university, you find people from all sorts of backgrounds, people from countries that you might have not heard of before. And it's just nice to socialize and expand your network, especially with a subject like medicine. It has such a quite like a big cohort and allows you like it opens up more opportunities to you. Like if you expand your network and you get to know more people, then you're bound to find more stuff to do, activities and opportunities career wise through them.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of like what you mentioned when you mentioned the independence and like there's that sort of danger maybe of falling behind, how have you felt you've dealt with that? Do you feel like you've stayed on top of it, you've been diligent, or have you got behind a little bit? How do you feel about that?
Um, I've got quite behind, but I like the option that King's College provides about online lectures. You can just
Yeah,
watch them recorded at home. I find that option quite like more viable for me because being in person is nicer, but you can get distracted easily. Whereas if you're at the comfort of your own home, you're saving money and you can go through it at your own pace. Um, so although I'm behind, EMDP gives me more time to manage the workload, and so it's just more flexible for me.
yeah, and to be fair as well, university and we focus so much on the academics, don't we? And I think when we talk to sixth formers, college students, we very much do focus on the academic side of things. But and students coming up with like diligent timetables. But the reality of it is like you want to take on that experience, enjoy the fun of it. The opportunity to join lots of new clubs, societies, meet lots of people, and in some sense, you will get the work done. Like if you've got to where you are, you can get the work done. Just knuckle down for a few weeks and you'll catch up, right?
Yeah, it's quite hard to stick to a routine because there could be like so many activities popping up. For example, in my schedule, if I have a work shift with, because I'm a student ambassador, and there's a work shift that pops up and I applied for it might take up like I have to fit my academic work around it. Like if I had that time slot specifically to study, but then afterwards I have some another commitment coming up, especially because I'm involved in so many societies and sports.
Yeah,
That could be quite hard to balance. So you just have
yeah.
to compromise sometimes and find other contingency plans to accommodate for the study period that you might have missed.
Exactly. And what is your sort of final few weeks of study looking like? Do you have any kind of like essays coming up or like exams to look forward to, I guess, or is that in January?
So all exams in medicine are multiple choice questions, single
Nice.
best. And so there's one mock exam during January, and there is the end of year exam, which is the final and the important one in May. So I have that coming up, and I have a Christmas break coming up, 3 weeks. I'll spend the time leading up to this exam preparing for it and making sure that I know the content well.
Yeah, yeah. So that actual format exam is actually quite different as well, isn't it? To say what you'd expect from like an A-level biology paper, right?
Yeah, I would have expected it to be more essay based or
Mm.
just more detailed, but it's quite like specific. Like they just want this specific detail from the lectures, and they tell you from the start you have to memorize the lectures word for word, and anything could come up from the lectures. So
Mm.
just quite hard to pick up what should you prioritize in terms of content. So you just have to go through as much of it as you can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And in terms of that academic work, how have you found that transition academically into from A level to this sort of 1A university level in terms of like difficulty? Have you felt a shift or is it sort of like manageable, gradual? Like how do you feel about that?
The way the content is structured, they start off with the A-level topics content. So it's easy in the beginning if you've done A-level biology or chemistry. then it gradually gets harder, but it's still manageable, and you still have like such a big cohort and people to ask. Even the teachers and lecturers, they're always available on site to ask questions. So if you have any problems in your understanding, you can always ask people. And then afterwards, it's all down to memorization. Like all you have to do is just memorize the lecture slides, and that's it. Like there's nothing more to it. And then to help you memorize, you should understand the processes and whatnot. But you could just memorize the lecture content and get by. That's an option.
Yeah, so getting those flashcards out basically to do the content. Um, I'm curious as well because we've talked about sort of social aspects quite a lot. In terms of what your sort of social network at university looks like, would you say, quite a lot of say your like friends from uni are they medics because you've met them on your course, or because you've gone to a lot of societies and sports? Do you think you've actually built quite a network of like non-medics? And if you have, I'm like curious what range of subject areas they study.
I'm quite an extroverted person, so I built up my network to be very diversified from
Nice.
all sorts of backgrounds. And I just like how King's College is so vast, campus-wise. So I keep exploring new places. Like each campus is so big, there's something new to see. And although I'm based in Guys and I shouldn't be at Strand or Waterloo to other campuses, I've still managed to go to them. And I've even went to Denmark Hill, which is quite remote and not known as much. So
Yeah.
I keep exploring places and meeting new people, like at each campus. Plus, the societies I've involved, like Islamic society, is so vast. You can meet people from different subject areas and whatnot.
I feel like you're doing, everything pretty much right from like a first year. This is what we would want our students to do, right? Go discover places. And actually, some Somerset House campus, the one at the Strand, it is really beautiful actually. It'd be a shame
Yeah.
to, go to King's College and only ever spend your time say at Guy's, which is a wonderful campus as well. But the Strand campus is stunning, right? Bush House, Somerset House, all the buildings. So it's great that you've gone and visited that as well and got in that experience.
It kind of gives you the opportunity to choose. For example, as you said, the Somerset House at Strand, it's quite modern, and there's
Yeah.
Bush House, which are both like quite nice looking and aesthetic. But some people might not like that environment, and other people might prefer Guy's Campus, which arguably is more cozy, it's more
Hmm.
comfortable to be in, and it has a better vibes, I guess, and environment.
Yeah, I totally agree with you actually about Guys. That's one thing I think I like about it because I kind of like the coziness of it. Like when you're at Guys, and I would encourage, any students watching who are thinking about Kings, and hopefully you are, because otherwise you wouldn't be watching, I suppose, would be to come visit Guys when you can, wherever you're from in the country, and any of our campuses, right? But I feel like, yeah, if you're going to do medicine, Guys is lovely because there's like a quietness about it. Like when you're in the middle of the square in between, say, Hodgkin Building and New Hunt's house, you're sort of literally in central London. The Shard is literally next to you. But for me, you kind of get this, you're in this almost like an oasis. I don't know, it might be the wrong word, but there's this sort of quietness about it, right?
Yeah, it's in a busy city, yet it's quite surrounded by its buildings, and they're quite old, full of heritage and history. Like I'm at Hodgkin Building right now, and there's statues with names from like people who used to be at King's College from let's say 1800, 1600, so far back. And yes, as a person who's interested in history and culture, that just appeals to me.
Yeah, like you feel you're part of that tradition as well as yeah, like New Hunt's house as well, which is a newer building on site, but it's still beautiful. I think it's really nicely designed, and sits well with like Hodgkin, which is opposite, which is beautiful with all the what do you call it, like leaves all over the front of it. It's really stunning. So students, that's a little plug. Come visit us at an open day. Um, I say I just want to delve a bit more into your experience, Alavi, like joining Kings then, and a sort of a question I have for you is it's a few weeks ago now, so I don't know, like 8, 9 weeks, but sort of can you tell me what it was like kind of coming to say your first lecture at King's, do you sort of could you describe how that felt?
So my first lecture like class was EMDP specific. I got to meet my cohort, the program directors. It was quite a nice session because the program directors they were engaging. They talked about the personal life, and I just felt like I was at home. Like the people around, I already made friends just as I entered the room. I got to know so many people in my year group, and because even though EMDP is only 80 people, it feels like a
Mm.
big cohort that you're going to spend 6 years with, and you're bound to find someone that you can relate to and just be friends with. My first lecture, it was an introductory lecture. It was in the big lecture theatre, and I could see the whole MBBS cohort. I think
Wow.
it was over 300 people easily. And they mentioned how this is the only time you would see your whole cohort because the rest of the time during the year, people might not attend the lectures in person, like me.
Mm.
And I could meet the lecturers, and they talked about the academic background. And it was just interesting to see what I had waiting for me in the next 6 years.
Nice, nice. Yeah, no, I did finish my MSc last year, and like I went to the first few lectures and then I was like, you know what, I'm okay with watching a recording. So very bad. But it's also it depends on who you are, your personality, time. So but I do remember as well, and I love how you've described that because there is something special when you sit in that lecture and you're sort of in a lecture room and you just see all the chairs full and everyone's with like their laptops and stuff, and you do feel like you're, all these things we have like college, going to college or whatever, which we see in American movies, and it kind of gives you that vibe. I feel like when you go there in person. I mean, that's how I feel about it. That's cool. In terms of sort of over the last 12 weeks, then what would you say? I think we've alluded to it, but what's the sort of best thing about being a medical student at King's for you now, or just a student at King's in general?
First of all, the large cohort. There's so many people that you can meet, people from different backgrounds, as I said, and just getting to know them about like that's something that interests me. Like I'm interested in people's backgrounds, their stories, and their cultures, especially. And then I wanted to I want to take an initiative from the start to further my career already. So I try expand my network, and because King's has the biggest medical school, it's just quite advantageous for me to get to know people and find more events and opportunities through the other people at my course. And and because medicine is such a there's so many people doing medicine. There's so many resources available, especially provided by the university
Mm.
themselves. And overall, I feel like I'm being supported to the maximum, like to the fullest possible potential. And another thing that I like about being a medical student could be the content in the lectures. So let's say I'm watching the lecture about a process that's happening inside my body right now to keep me alive. So I find that quite interesting and how I can relate the stuff that I learned to real life examples and how I'm going to use the stuff that I'm going to learn to save a life potentially. I just find
Mm.
that quite fascinating.
Yeah, no, no, the content, I'm not a biologist, but from what I've learned over the last few years and talking to medical students, it just sounds absolutely fascinating. I'm really curious to just follow up on uh, what you discussed in terms of networking, Alavi. And I'm curious, what do you think for, in terms of networking, what sort of strategies or tools do you employ, like in terms of like meeting people, or what do you think people see as challenging about that? Because I feel like that is something that's really important actually at medical school. If you can get that right and build a network of people that can support you and also open up opportunities for you, it's such a key important skill to hone. And it sounds like it's something you're good at. But yeah, what would be say a tip you would say to someone?
So I would say in the first few weeks of university is much easier, like the freshers period. Like you could strike up a conversation with anyone by being like just introduce yourself, tell them your name, ask for their name, and ask about their background, like where they're from. And then afterwards, try to explore their interests and see like what what specialty they could be interested in. For example, I'm interested in orthopedics. If I meet someone who's also interested in orthopedics, then I could find out, let's say, what societies they're involved in, or if they know of any opportunities coming up mm, to learn more and get an insight into career specialties, like I did through the lecture series program at King's.
Nice, nice. We shall
Uh,
talk about this. But I think that's great. It's really interesting. And I'm thinking I will probably get you more involved in helping me craft something on networking at medical school or something like that, because I think it's so important. And even for professionals, like I guess myself as well, like that ability to feel comfortable talking to others, building up a network, building those what do you call it, like periphery kind of contacts. I've listened to quite a few things lately, and they've said that those are the things that open up lots of opportunities for you. Those people that you have a connection with, but they aren't, say, your best friend, because they're different from you in a way. They might have slightly different interests, and from connecting with them, you then, like you said, you find someone else who has a shared interest in orthopedics, but they might also have an interest in something else which you hadn't thought of is somehow related to orthopedics, and then that opens up an opportunity for you maybe. So I think that's such an important insight. And so the follow up to sort of the best thing about life as a medical student at King's is obviously, what is, say, the most challenging thing you found so far about being a medical student or just student at King's in general?
so of course, the obvious answer is the content. Like, it's just it's so much to cover. It will be overwhelming. And as I said from the beginning, they tell you anything and everything could come up on the lecture slides. So initially, you might panic and think, okay, what do I write in my flashcards? What do I actually revise? What do I prioritize? I've tackled that problem by speaking to older people who already walked through my journey, and they were able to advise me in what to focus on content wise. And that's another advantage of being like expanding your network and just being involved in societies. And another EMDP specific problem could be time management. Although
Yeah.
you might think that having loads of time is an advantage, it could be overwhelming at the same time. For example, in the beginning, I got involved in lots of societies, as I said, boxing, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, gym, and other societies like Islamic societies and whatnot. And then the freshers period came out, like it ended, and I'm at this stage where I'm kind of burnt out. I need to prioritize one thing. Like I can barely go attend any of the events that I committed my time to. So it's all about staying consistent and trying to make an effort to be on top of your work and just balancing everything. Social work, social life and work life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think finding those priorities for you, and I think in some sense what you're describing is quite natural, isn't it? Like you get involved in lots of things, figuring out what you really like, and then thinking, you know what, like I really like, say, BJJ, and so I'll stick with that, but maybe not boxing, or maybe I'll do one session of each because I want to still do both, rather than, say, both twice a week or whatever, which is obviously going to be a lot of work in terms of your body and your mind. So um, I guess that's Christmas break, right? Is that sort of time, right, to reevaluate your priorities?
Yeah. Or it would be now in my like as soon as possible because I've already made the monetary commitment. Like I paid for the sessions and I
Nice.
haven't been attending, so it's quite bad financially for me.
So yeah, just got to figure that out. Nice, nice, nice. Cool. Um, Great. And I'm curious, is there anything you have found so far, just sort of to conclude this section on your like current experience of medical school, that has maybe surprised you, or something you that was different from what you maybe imagined your experience of medical school, what it would be like? Is there anything that stands out?
Um, it's more relaxed and laid back than I expected. I
Mm.
thought it would be just work, 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 but the social life is great, at King's especially. Uh, I've emphasized how I've met so many people, and I'm still able to maintain these relationships. And I expected it to be so strict, like work on top of work, but you can go at it at your own pace. There is no such thing as homework. You can just use whatever study technique that you think is best, and it's more personal to you to tackle the content, essentially.
That's awesome. Cool, cool, cool. And I guess I want to talk about um, how you've come to sort of decide to do medicine. And so, yeah, let's move on to that now, because I think that's quite important. Because obviously you're 1A, so you've only just joined, which is great. This is why I wanted to talk to you because all our sixth formers probably watching this are only a couple of years younger than you are. Some might be in year 13, so it could literally be 1 year. So could you tell me about sort of how you came to that decision to actually want to study medicine in the first place?
I decided quite early on in year 10, like I had a vague idea that I'm interested in medicine and it's a career that I would like to pursue. And then over the years, year 11, 12, I looked into the career further, like what it entails. And I tried to get myself involved in as many uh, programs as possible. For example, the Imperial Pathways to Medicine, UCL has a similar program as well, and then Sutton Trust. And applied for K Plus and Medview, but I was not successful in that application. But the lecture series has helped me as an
Nice.
alternative. So these programs they gave me an insight into what it's like to be a doctor and through work experience as well. So shadowing doctors online, it just gave me a rough idea of what it's like in this profession, and I just fell in love with like how it's always something different. Like you could come into work and not one day will be the same as the other. You're always going to find new people and new problems and you have to work out new solutions. And that appeals to my inquisitive nature and extroverted nature because I get to meet so many people and then just get to know them on a personal level and just feel that I've made an impact on society by helping someone's well-being. And then so initially, I developed this interest in medicine because I was good at biology and I like the content and I like the human body. So just learning, just doing medicine, it combines all my interests together in one profession.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up actually. It was going to ask, do you remember what that fit, how what you were thinking in year 10? What was that initial thing that kind of grabbed your made you think, you know what, being a doctor might be a good option for me? And it was that sort of, learning about anatomy and that kind of stuff, would you say?
And there is an aspect about predictability in terms of career progression. Like you graduate and you go into the NHS, and then afterwards, the next steps are quite laid out and structured. Um, I just like that because it just gives me stability. I know what the next step is. Whereas in other careers, um, let's say if you did this engineering, like finding a job, finding something that finding a career path that interests you because there's so many engineering prospects. I just didn't find that appealing. Like the structured approach just made it much more easier, like for decision making in general.
Like you can sort of see, yeah,
Yeah,
like the next steps. It's like very much laid out, isn't it, for you?
yeah. As a person
And
who likes to plan ahead, it just
yeah.
appeals.
And in terms of the programs you did, so you did what the UCL Target Med one and the Imperial Pathway Scheme as well. You did both of those.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Cool. Wow. So you got involved in lots of different stuff. In terms of like managing your time at sixth form, was that sort of quite challenging with those? If you got the Imperial scheme, UCL scheme, you said about being involved in the lectures as well, that I look after, as well as studying. And it seems like, you like to get involved like socially with a lot of things as well. So I imagine it was quite similar at school. Was that quite challenging or yeah, how did you find that experience?
Um. So I would say that I was quite. I looked into all the possible programs and events to help me get into medicine, and I was quite well aware of what was out there through friends and people that I talked to. So that's why how I came across like all these programs. And then after applying to all of them, they were quite like sparse, like laid out. Could be one event today, the next could be next week. All cluttered together.
Mm.
So that allowed me. So it wasn't as hard to fit into my schedule. It wasn't. I wouldn't have to compromise so much time and take away from my study periods. Um, yeah, it wasn't as challenging as you might think.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. And in terms of sort of the stages, like that process of getting into medical school, was there a particular aspect of that process that you found the most challenging? What would you say was most difficult about if we think about the different things you have to do to get into medical school, whether that's sort of the UCAT, just getting the grades, getting experience so you can talk about things at interview. What for you was the bit that you found most challenging and how did you overcome it?
So the steps are decide decide which unis you want to apply to.
Sure, yeah.
Afterwards, do the entrance exams, UCAT, BMAT, and then in between there's the Year 12 end of year exams that give you the predicted grades to apply for the universities and meet the edge requirements. Afterwards, it's the personal statement for UCAS, and then just before the end, you have the interviews to prepare for. Um, I was I could do my research and prepare for the interviews, the edge exams, and to find out which unis are best suited to me. But I think maybe I should have focused more on the Year 12 exams, like end of year prediction, because they affected my predicted grades.
See.
And the UK exam, I knew what I should have done at the time. I should have dedicated more time. Uh, but at the end, when it came to the exam day, I feel like it's quite varied. It's quite random. For example, not everyone will get the same test because there's three different versions of the test, if I believe.
See.
And the verbal reasoning section of my exam, it was so hard. I scrolled through every passage at the beginning to check which one's the easiest, and they were all three, 4 paragraphs long, all passages. And so I've kind of uh, didn't do as well as I usually did in the verbal reasoning section, which kind of brought my UCAT down.
Mm.
So
Yeah, we
that's one.
do. Yeah, we say to students actually, I mean, we see the statistics at King's in general, and verbal reasoning is one that is tough. Like generally speaking, people don't do as well in it compared to say some of the other sections, which on the face of it seems quite surprising because when you see abstract reasoning, it's like, oh my God, like what is this? But I think verbal is definitely one that catches people out because it's on the face of it, it doesn't seem so bad, but actually it is one statistically people don't do as well in as say some of the others. Do you remember or could you comment on sort of your the strategies you employed in terms of learning for that exam? Like, how long did you give yourself? How did you kind of, what resources did you use as well?
Ideally, what I would recommend a student to dedicate in terms of time would be 6 to 4 weeks. And as you get closer to the exam date, just every day practice more and more questions and try and find what resources are available. For example, Medify, uh, Medify and then PassMed. They have question banks for the UCAT. Some people were able to use just PassMed and do really well in the UCAT. So it's quite varied and it depends on people, person to person. Uh, I would say just try your best and not be too obsessed over the UCAT results. Like if you look into the university options carefully, I think you can always find something that will be more specific and appropriate towards the UCAT score,
Mm.
which is what I was able to do by finding the MDP program through my research into universities. So yeah, that's a piece of advice I would give to sixth form students.
Yeah, I think something I've been saying a lot recently as well is, there's no harm as well, quite long in advance, just looking at the exam and just seeing how you feel about it as well, because everyone's going to feel a bit differently about that kind of test, like in terms of how long they want to revise for. Do they just want to do it over a short period and like an intensive driving sort of test, just go all in on it for like 6 to 4 weeks? Or do you want to give yourself much longer? And it's just going to depend on different personalities, right? I'm Yeah, I'm curious as well in terms of, yeah, so if you don't mind sharing, I mean, I'm curious to know in terms of, yeah, where you decided to apply in the end. So obviously the KCL EMDP was one of them, but were you quite London centric, or were you sort of happy to go elsewhere, say across the UK?
Um, Initially, I would have loved to move out just for to experience this new life chapter and just move out away from home. So I applied for Kent and Medway, which is my
Okay.
other offer, and then I applied for Southampton. I had an interview, but I didn't get an offer afterwards. Although I felt that I did really good in the interview. And then my fourth option was Nottingham,
Mm. Okay.
and
And
then my fifth option was biomedicine at St George's, because they had an option to switch over to medicine
I
midway through the
see.
program. But I'm hearing that they're going to scrap that option, so I wouldn't recommend it.
I see. I see. Okay, cool. So those were your options in the end. So how do you feel then? Because that's quite interesting actually. Because I do speak to lots of obviously students from the EMDP because a lot of them are our ambassadors, and some of them do literally apply to King's and all the other London unis because they want to live at home, stay at home, live in London. So how do you feel? I guess your experience now is different to what it would have been. Do you kind of do you feel happy that you're sort of you're in obviously you're at King's, which is a great uni, but you're in London rather than sort of having that experience of moving out. Do you feel like you've missed out, or do you think now you've started, you feel like what actually things still having a great time, still getting involved in lots of stuff?
In hindsight, I think it was a better option because there's just more opportunities being at a university in London. And it just goes well with my other goal, which is to pay off the tuition fees myself and not take the
Yeah.
student loans. So it just saves a lot of money being at home. And there's just more work opportunities, especially at King's College, where I can work as an ambassador and these roles. And then, and there's just, even though I would have loved the independence, but I think I might have not been ready, like dealing with the workload in medicine and then afterwards dealing with the, let's say, daily chores at home, cooking for myself might have not been the best option in the long term.
Yeah. It's a lot to take on. I remember when I made my choices. So Edinburgh was my first choice, and then University of Essex, which I went to in the end, was my second. And in hindsight, I think actually things worked out for the best because for me, I think going up to Edinburgh, it would have just been like this huge, huge shift, miles away from home. Like I'm quite close to my family. I wasn't moving away because I wanted to get away from them. It was, I don't know, it was a good uni, good entry requirements and stuff for me. But I think things turned out well in the end because I was sort of still, quite close to home, and I could come back when I wanted, which was quite good. And not spend like £200 on a train ticket or whatever from Edinburgh, which would have bankrupted me. But yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear about where you applied in the end. And actually, that was going to be one of my questions, and we talked about that sort of fifth option. What do you think you you would be doing right now if you hadn't have say got into the EMDP? Do you think you would have say taken a gap year and tried to reapply? Do you think you would have taken that fifth option? What do you think would have happened?
Um, Ideally, I would have taken a gap year and just make sure my application was stronger because I was already committed to medicine, so I might as well see it through. And back in those days, I thought I had an like I thought taking a gap year and getting into medicine, which is a 5 year long degree, it would just make it longer and longer. But I'm seeing people get into medicine like at the age of 24, and
Mm,
by 24, I'm expecting to be graduating, yet they're starting medicine at this age. It just goes to show that it doesn't really matter in the end, like at what age you start. It won't hinder your life experiences, I guess. Like you can get into medicine at whatever stage in life you are. Um, but I mean, the another option that I thought of is starting a degree, let's say the fifth option, and while you're doing the fifth option, apply for medicine
Mm.
while you're at a different uni. So if within that first year you're successful in getting to medicine, undergraduate medicine at another uni, you can drop that course that you are on and just start over in medicine. I found that through speaking to someone who's at King's College and has done the same. He's currently in fourth year.
Mm. Okay, so that's an interesting strategy. Um, I would just probably should make a note here that students would need to be wary if they want to apply to the MDP because you wouldn't be able to do that. If you started a degree, you'd be ineligible basically. However, for other places and maybe the main MBS, that's maybe okay. But sometimes as well, just taking that gap year, there's been quite a few ambassadors I've spoken to, some of our best ambassadors as well, who took, say, a gap year because things didn't work out with interview. It wasn't about their exam grades. The interview process is extremely tough. And if people don't say pass it, shouldn't necessarily feel bad because it could come down to one question. And actually, they've all said, taking that year to kind of mature and like get part-time job, work as like a HCA, maybe travel, was actually really good for them. So, but like you say, people join when they're in their mid-20s as well. And maybe we put so much pressure on ourselves to kind of get to the goalposts actually like super young, and it's like, actually, do we need to do that? Is that just adding to our anxiety, right? Just need to slow down a bit. Anyway, but you made it first time, so it's great. Great for you, Alavi. um Great. So thanks for sharing that about the application process, and this kind of moves me to kind of the second part of the second segment, before we sort of come to our sort of conclusion, because I know we're sort of running along with time actually. In terms of the lecture series, because you've mentioned that, and that's obviously something I run, and it's sort of my baby, that I look after, and I love to deliver and work with our students to hopefully give them a really good program, and it's something I'm continue to sort of work and develop on. So my first question is, how did you sort of discover the lecture program, and yeah, so how did you find out about it?
Um, through talking to people and looking on websites, like uh, what's available out there for someone like me from a widening participation background, I try to apply to as many programs as possible. I think I found out about the lecture series after being unsuccessful for my K plus application. I think in the rejection email they might have listed you might want to apply for the lecture series instead. So I applied for it, I was successful, and I found it quite useful because it gave me an insight into what medicine is like. It talked about from the perspective of someone who graduated, a specialist, a doctor, and a day in their life. And after seeing what their work and profession is like, I felt more interested and more and just more motivated to pursue this degree. But it might have been useful for other people who might contemplate other career choices, like if they're still unsure on medicine, it could give them a clearer picture if it's the career for them. But it helped me make sure that I was ready for medicine and it's the degree for me. And then it was just quite interesting in general. It was so interesting that I went back and I watched the recordings again afterwards to see what they talked about, and I used the speeches and what they mentioned to talk about, and I talked about it in my personal statement or interviews. Like I wrote down every little details I found is useful, and I just used it in my own application process when getting into medicine.
Also, that's so good to hear. And it's so nice to hear, you took advantage of the recordings as well, because that's something that anyone who becomes part of the program, so if they joined, say, my 2023 program, they would have access to all those recordings, and they're all released at the end of the program as well. So you can go back. Hopefully, I want you to attend the actual live lecture, and it sounds like you did, but to have that, obviously, to watch the recordings, I always say to students, over August, rewatch them. You can watch them in times two, and it sounds like you did do exactly what I was trying to encourage students to do. So often I get emails and they're like, I want my certificate, or they want to say in their application, oh, I attended 10 of 13 lectures. And it's actually like, what's more important is for you to say, I attended Dr. Maple's lecture on transplant surgery. And I was really fascinated by the ethics surrounding transplants and how donations, and you have this chain, and maybe talking about that work more and more research you've done. So that's really, really good. Sounds like 4 marks from me, Alavi, on how you use the lecture series. I really appreciate hearing that. And so yeah, actually, I mean, you answered my follow-up question, which was going to be what did you most enjoy, and how did it sort of add to your application for medicine? And it sounds like it helped you sort of with a personal statement or interview, and it's something else to talk about, basically. Do you remember whether there was any particular session? I might be putting you on the spot here, but was there, say, a particular session that stood out to you, or is it? It's quite long ago now for you. It's probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago. So
Uh, one lecture that I remember quite clearly, I think it was this woman, and she was involved in kidneys, like renal
yeah,
transplant.
Dr. Maple's one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah,
Uh, she was quite good at storytelling and how her journey began. And she quite sold it well, her profession, like her specialty in kidneys. She was quite good at describing what it entails, and I found it quite convincing. At that time, I wanted to be a kid. It kind of tried to make me, like, I was persuaded to like, pursue kidney, like, something to do with the kidneys in general, in my career as a doctor. And but each, but every other speaker did the same as well, especially like cardiothoracic surgeon.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
he talked about his profession. Like they were all enticing, and they just gave interesting like stories into what a day in their life is like.
That's awesome. And actually, you've hit the nail on the head there. And I think we get that feedback from lots of students, and even myself watching it. Because like you watch one, you're like, oh my god, like I want to be like a transplant surgeon now. And then you watch the next one, you're like, oh, I want to be a psychiatrist. Because like it reminds me of when I did my degree, and it's like each week you're like, oh, I want to find out more about this aspect of philosophy, which was what my degree was in. And I think that's quite fun. So hopefully, for you and for others, it is that kind of jumping off point to think, oh, I could research that little niche thing I've discovered from that lecture. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Alavi. So just to sum up, because I think we've run on slightly too long, which is my fault, because I've got this huge list of questions that I've wanted to ask you. And I said I wouldn't ask them all, but I've done more or less all of them now. So I may as well finish that off. What are you most looking forward to going into your second term? So when you get back in January, is there anything in particular you're looking forward to doing, or just in general?
So we talked about all these societies that I'm involved in and how I've been struggling to manage the time commitment. I just want to be more stable and finalize my decisions, I guess, and make sure I'm committed to specific things and I stick to them every week. And another thing, academic wise, I just want to be on top of it from next term and make sure that I'm not behind and possibly ahead if possible. Although from it's only gradually going to get worse. More lectures every day. I'm hearing up to 4 lectures a day. So it will be quite hard, but I'll try my best and try to expand my network even further and just make sure, although I'm in first year and I've been called naive by the older students who see that I'm quite keen into looking into stuff that's quite at the end of my career stage, like looking
Mm.
into specialties already, although I'm in year one. I still like to plan ahead as a person, and I just want to see what opportunities are available in the future. So just keep going at it and just seeking the opportunities. That's what I want to carry on doing in the next time.
That's awesome. We're definitely going to create that session. Alavi's 101 on networking. I think we will definitely do as part of 2023 program for sure. I will be in touch. And so just thinking about um I'm just saying I've got two questions which are kind of along the lines of tips. And I'm just deciding which one I want to go with. And I think I'm going to go with this one. So if you were to go back in time, sort of 2 years now, so your year 12 self in the autumn term, what would you say to him? Like what would be say a tip, or what would you say to your year 12 self of 2 years ago who's thinking about, applying to medicine quite soon?
First of all, I would tell myself to focus on the exams. Like I was too bogged down on the details, like the application process, looking into what unis are available, the entrance exams, and personal statement and whatnot. But I skipped the most basic step, like one of the most important ones in the application stage, and it it brought me down, predicted grade, like in terms of predicted grades. So I told myself to focus on that and not to worry if it doesn't go my way, because as I looked into the universities, like possible pathways into medicine, in the beginning I might have thought it's quite restricted. You need these grades, and if you don't get these grades, then you can't get it. But then afterwards, I gradually learned that there is so many pathways available, especially for someone from my background.
Mm.
And although you might think it's hard, it's possible. And in the end, I'll tell him with my hindsight that I'm going to EMTP at King's College, and I'm quite happy.
That's awesome. So I think that's a lovely note to end on, Alavi. So thanks so much for spending some of your afternoon with me answering these questions. I really appreciate it, and there's some really great nuggets of advice that you've shared, which I think have been really appreciated. So, and it's so good for me as well because I've been at King's now for more or less 3 years, and it's been really nice actually working here for that sort of length of time now, because I'm starting to meet students like yourself who have been involved in, say, a program I've run, and hopefully had some small part in helping you along your pathway to get into where you want to be. So yeah, it's just a real pleasure to meet you and chat with you, and over the years now work with you to get more students and help more students get onto the King's programs as well. So yeah, thanks so much, Alavi. And yeah, cheers.